Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari. Yasharanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yasharanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Privajakachaja Asatara Sata Śrimad. Hidavine Grace Abhaya Chanan Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jaya Nitya Lila Pavishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Privajakachaja Asatara Sata Śrimad. Hidavine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki. Grantharaj Śrimad Bhāgavatam Ki. Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga and Srila Prabhupada. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita, Volume 6, chapter titled, The Final Lesson. For the purpose of preaching, displaying this gem had not always been the most effective way to spread the merciful teachings of Lord Krishna in every town and village. This gem is humility. That's where we left off. Prabhupada was asking everyone for forgiveness. But now it could be displayed. In London and now in Vrindavan, Prabhupada was showing his disciples extra affection and gratitude, without the reprimands usually necessary in training disciples. This attitude of complete humility was a symptom of the highest stage of devotional life. Srila Prabhupada had explained in his books that the Madhyamadhikari, the second-class devotee, makes distinctions between the devotees, the innocent non-devotees, and the demons, whereas the Mahabhagavat, or the first-class devotee, sees everyone except himself as a servant of God. Sometimes, however, the Mahabhagavat desires to come down from the first-class platform to the second-class platform, just to take up the most compassionate service of preaching Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada's disciples had all read of the Mahabhagavat stage in the scriptures, and now they were seeing it fully displayed, as Prabhupada referred to himself as the most fallen and asked for everyone's forgiveness. Srila Prabhupada had heard of the program of his disciple Lokanath Swami, who was taking a small group of men in a bullock cart and preaching in villages throughout India. Lokanath had told Srila Prabhupada how, in the course of their travels, they had recently visited tirthas such as Badrak Ashram and Bhim Kapur. Srila Prabhupada was enlivened to hear this. And he then evolved a transcendental desire to go himself on a cart pulled by bullocks to circumambulate the area of Vrindavan. Tamal Krishna and Bhavananda, who were serving Prabhupada with increased intimacy, felt themselves unable to support Srila Prabhupada in his desire, since they thought his fragile body could not survive such rough treatment on the roads. But Srila Prabhupada reasoned that dying on parikrama is glorious, and he asked them to take him. A controversy developed among the devotees, as some said Prabhupada's will to go on parikrama should be immediately honored as an order from the spiritual master. He wanted it, and he should not be denied. The doctor, however, assured them that Srila Prabhupada's body would not survive the jostling of the cart. The many devotees who crowded around Srila Prabhupada's bed held different opinions, and Prabhupada could see this. Following his request, however, Lokanath went out and hired a cart with bullocks and prepared it for the ride. Lokanath and Hansarupa suggested that the parikram could go to the city of Vrindavan or visit the 7 main temples of the Goswamis. But then they said that since the next day was Govardhan Puja, Prabhupada could go on to Govardhan Hill. Tamal Krishna, Bhavananda, and Bhakti Churu, however, protested adamantly against the parikrama. One-day experiment, Prabhupada said. It is for one day. Rest assured, I will not die in one day. He liked the idea of going to Govardhan, and we shall make our cooking there, he said. Lokanath Goswami, he assured them, was experienced. Make very good picnic, he said. After discussing back and forth, the devotees finally decided that early next morning they would take Srila Prabhupada in a bullock cart to Govardhan. The majority of the devotees then left Srila Prabhupada alone for the night. Later that night, Srila Prabhupada received a visit from Niskinchana Krishnadas Babaji, who sat with Prabhupada chanting and sometimes speaking in Bengali. Suddenly, Tamal Krishna and Bhavananda came to Prabhupada's bedside. They were in tears and beside themselves with anxiety. Prabhupada understood. You request me not to go, he asked. Well, Srila Prabhupada said to Tamal Krishna, I'll tell you, I'm getting so upset in the room upstairs. I was walking around. 2 of the devotees told me that this road is so bad that if you go on this road, you're going to be jolted back and forth. The road is terrible. I just can't understand, Srila Prabhupada, why it has to be tomorrow that we have to go. Of anybody that wants you to travel, I do. Why do we have to go when you're in this condition? I can't understand it. Why are we throwing everything out the window that we must go tomorrow? I can't understand. All right, said Srila Prabhupada softly, immediately agreeing to their proposal that he not go. Jai, Srila Prabhupada, said Bhakti Churu, who was also present. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada, said Bhavananda with great relief. All right, you're satisfied? Now I am, Srila Prabhupada, said Bhavananda. Yes, I was in too much anxiety. Never mind, I shall not put you in anxiety. Actually, Srila Prabhupada said to Tamal Krishna, we're so much attached to you that you practically drive us to madness sometimes. Tonight we'll be becoming mad. No, I shall not do that, said Prabhupada. Babaji Maharaj, Prabhupada turned to Niskinchana Krishnadas Babaji and said, just see how much affection they have for me. Srila Prabhupada said to Tamal Krishna, the way you deal with us simply deepens our attachment every moment. It is my duty, said Prabhupada, and the devotees laughed warmly, understanding. Yes, they could understand, that was his duty. By all his actions and dealings, Prabhupada's intention was to capture spirit souls and deliver them to Krishna. His method was loving service, but he did not do it for himself. He was delivering them to Krishna. That was his duty. Srila Prabhupada ki. sometimes difficult to read these pastimes. Thank you. What verse are we on? 37. 27. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Are you double checking the verse for me? It's 37. Yeah, that's what I thought. That's okay. It's only 10 other verses. Reading from Śrimad Bhāgavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 26, Text 37. Are we there? Yep. Chalanang vyuhanang praptir. Chalanang vyuhanang praptir. Netridvam dravya sabdayo. Netridvam dravya sabdayo. Svavendriyanam atmavam. Svavendriyanam atmavam. Vayakama vilakshanam. Vayakama vilakshanam. Please chant. Chalanang vihanang praptir. Netradvang dravya sabdayo. Svavendriyanam atmavam. Maya karma vilakshanam. Ladies. Chalanang vihanang praptir. Netridvang dravya sabdayo. Svavendriyanam atmavam. Maya karma vilakshanam. Chalanam, moving. Vyuhanam, mixing. Prapti, allowing approach. Netridvam, carrying. Dravya shabdayo, particles of substances and sound. Sarva indriyanam, of all the senses. Atmavan, providing for the proper functioning. Vayo, of air. Karma, by actions. Abhilakshanam, the distinct characteristics. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The action of the air is exhibited in movements, mixing, allowing approach to the objects of sound and other sense perception, and providing for the proper functioning of all other senses. Please repeat. The action of the air is exhibited in movements, mixing, allowing approach to the objects of sound and other sense perceptions, and providing for the proper functioning of all other senses. Purport. We can perceive the action of the air when the branches of a tree move, or when dry leaves on the ground collect together. Similarly, it is only by the action of the air that a body moves, and when the air circulation is impeded, many diseases result. Paralysis, nervous breakdowns, madness, and many other diseases are actually due to an insufficient circulation of air. In the Ayurvedic system, these diseases are treated on the basis of air circulation. If from the beginning one takes care of the process of air circulation, such diseases cannot take place. From the Ayurveda, as well as from the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, it is clear that so many activities are going on internally and externally because of air alone. And as soon as there is some deficiency in the air circulation, these activities cannot take place. Here it is clearly stated, Netrit Vang Dravya Shabdayo. Our sense of proprietorship over action is also due to the activity of the air. If the air circulation is stifled, we cannot approach a place after hearing. If someone calls us, we hear the sound because of the air circulation, and we approach that sound or the place from which the sound comes. It is clearly said in this verse that these are all movements of the air. The ability to detect odors is also due to the action of the air. Om Jnana Tamradasya Aganacharasakaya Chakshuramatamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Mankai Teganam Yakipatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dirataranam. This might seem somewhat technical, this section of the Bhagavatam, as we go through all these various intricacies of the interactions, the modes of material nature, and the resulting features that we take for granted in regards to the senses and the perception associated with those senses. And Prabhu, and we use this in preaching. Sometimes we refer to the movement of air, which you cannot perceive with your eyesight, but you can feel by the touch of your skin, or you can understand by the movement of the trees, as Prabhupada described, and the collection of the leaves. So in that way, we extrapolate and explain to those who might have a little intelligence that in this way, some people doubt the existence of the soul. Why? Because it cannot be seen. For most, it cannot be measured. Although we've had one example some years ago, there was a doctor who was performing some, not experiment, so to speak, but somehow or other they had calculated that there was a minute change in the difference of the mass of a body at the moment of death. But how distinct can that be? The spirit soul is 1/10,000th the size of the tip of a hair. But that's not the only thing that's leaving the body at the time of death. What is also leaving the body? The air, the prana. So in that way, there's certainly a measurement. So the air is in the body the whole entire time that the living entity is alive. But at the time of death, that air is gone. And so yes, there is some. And anyone who has been in that unfortunate situation to see that transition up front, up close and personal, as they say, notices that there's a distinct transition. The life goes out of the eyes. It's like somebody turned off a switch. It is that distinct. So this is, so there are so many evidences if someone wants to know, someone wants to appreciate that there is, yes, the difference between the living body and the dead body. At the time of my father's passing, I had to give eulogy to all my relatives. It's quite, I mean, at that time I'd been a devotee for over 10 years, but still, I hadn't had much interaction with my relatives. You know, everyone, you know, whatever is required, you do, but not so much more than that. Then, but still, you know, there's some concern, and as the oldest son, I was expected to give what they call eulogy. So of course I appreciated that my father had done so many things in relationship. He had even lent his car to me to pick up Srila Prabhupada at the airport in 1976. And then he met Prabhupada at the Rath Yatra. Huh? It was a Ford LTD. You can read about it in Hari Sari's Transcendental Diary. And they didn't know it, but it was a brown car. And it's in the video, you can see Prabhupada being picked up. A Ford LTD. They thought it was a Mercury, but it was an LTD. But it was just below the level of Lincoln. Prabhupada liked Ford, obviously, for obvious reasons. He liked Ambarish. Ambarish was and so he liked Ford cars. So in this way, so I just gave all these, you know, my father's family was quite wealthy, and all the people who were there, they were very much, you could say, in the upper levels of the social strata, quite important people in New York City. And so I gave them the example that here, for so many years, we had the association of my father's body, you know, and everyone is saying that now he's gone, but yet the body is still here. So I brought it to their attention that which we were attached to, that spirit soul has left the body. And so there's no more suffering, because there was some suffering. He had cancer, so there's no more suffering, and the soul is now liberated. And of course, I knew that based on what we understand from the philosophy, even a little service rendered to a pure devotee has great effect. So in that, and, you know, of course, he had rendered service in that regard with the car and other things. You know, he was very. But it's an opportunity when we have these circumstances to put into practice whatever we have assimilated and realized. All right? The famous part about giving a class is that you should never speak beyond your realization. You know, otherwise it's, you know, you get into the level of theoretical presentation. You know, there's so many things that you can understand and so many things you cannot. And there's no harm in that. We're not scientists. We are scientists. We understand the nature of the soul. We understand everything about it in that sense. Karanam guna sango shat sadasat joni jambasha. We know all about transmigration of the soul. We know everything. Why? What is the theory of evolution? Actually, I'm just listening to a lecture, and Prabhupada talked about the living entities transmigrating through these different 8,400,000 species of life, and how, if you're unfortunate to go down to that level again, it takes millions of years to get back up to the human form of life. Millions of years. Very unfortunate situation. And and he said that Darwin's theory of evolution is not perfectly explained. He said, but we have the perfect explanation. That the soul is transmigrating. And then we understand exactly how it is that due to karanam, due to one's action, in association with the modes of material nature, that this body is being prepared as we, in our everyday existence, as we go about whatever it is we're going about, the subtle changes are being made and that mindset, yam yam vapi samram bhavam, whatever one is thinking at the time of death, to that nature he attains without fail. That is a formula. That is not a suggestion. It is not that we can, you know, do something to change that. No, this is fixed. You know, as much as any chemical reaction or physical reaction. If you go into the laboratory and you mix, you know, two chemicals, there's a reaction that's predictable. It's not that it changes every single time, no. These things are done And it's a guarantee that this will be the result. So we see that even in nature, that these things are predictable. And so you can tell a person, yes, if you mix these two chemicals, you will get this such and such reaction. Nobody can deny. They cannot say, no, it will not happen for me. It will not happen in Russia. It will not happen in China. No, it will happen. It's universal. Right? No one says that this periodic table is the Russian periodic table. Everyone remembers the periodic table, right, from school? The chart of elements. No one says that this is the American periodic table. No. It is the same. So why would somebody say, well, of course they have the excuse of my religion is different. I go to heaven and you go to hell. Right? And that's the stand. That's what's going on right now. People are fighting over this. Whole wars are going on right now because of this distinction that my God is better than your God. And such foolishness. And it all can be finished in a moment if anyone takes to Krishna consciousness. No one is thinking that what I was previously. I mean, yeah, maybe it comes up sometimes in preaching. Yes, I was this, I was Christian, I was Jewish, I was Buddhist, whatever. But in general, these things are gone. They're no longer, and how is it? We no longer associate with that. Why? Because we've developed in our consciousness that, and it was easy to put it aside. How difficult it is for some, right? It's impossible. They so much identify with the body. Saeva Gokara. So much. And so we don't disturb their minds, right? Don't disturb the minds of the less intelligent. Okay? But try to give them some prasadam. Try to give them the benefit of something. Even such a simple thing, even if they render a little bit of service. We had it sometimes. You come across someone and you just say, can you just help me with this card? We don't want to argue. Just help me with the Sankirtan card. Even that much service will deliver a person at a certain point. Not necessarily immediately, we don't. But it can happen, depending on where that person is in his journey. That thread, that Suchinam Shrimatam Gehe. We make every effort to reach out because we know that there are out of the multi-varieties of individuals that we meet on the street, there are many who are just there. They're just waiting to get that book from us or that scoop of halava. And then it's just like you turn the page in the book. It's a different thing. It's there. Now they're here. So this is our very important service. And everyone who is distributing literature has this realization. When they see people come into the temple, that, oh, don't you remember me? And that happened to me. I've told the story. Go out in Sankirtan, you don't know. You just go out, you're doing your... And the 55th Street Temple was close to Central Park. So temple commanders, not a lot of time, finish your duty. But you want to do something, for Prabhupada, besides, cleaning the floors. And that's service, but still, book distribution has so much nectar involved. Why? Because you're directly preaching and you're having the opportunity to put into action whatever little realization you have acquired at that time. And so we would, I would go for the what they call the low-hanging fruit. I didn't want to chase people who are sitting down on the benches. They're sitting, so you just go there and you distribute them. They're not running away. I mean, they could, but go there, distribute back to Godhead. That's all we had was back to Godhead and incense in those days. And so, and I would go back to the temple, and then one time I was guarding Srila Prabhupada's room, and then, so I would sit outside the elevator. In 55th Street, we had 2 elevators. Very nice. Very nice building, very beautiful. We had 2 elevators. So I would sit outside Prabhupada's room, his sitting room. He had a whole wing of the 11th floor. So I would sit outside, and if the elevator doors opened, or if someone tried to sneak up through the back staircase, I was there. They couldn't get past me. And so the elevator opened, and this very nicely dressed American couple got out, and I thought maybe they got lost. They meant to go down to the restaurant or something, and ended up on the 11th floor. And so I said, "No, how can I help you?" I said, "Oh, we're here to see Srila Prabhupada." I said, "Oh, okay. Have a seat. I'll go inside to see, because at that time Prabhupada was talking. Prabhupada's always busy. He's translating. He's not a second wasted in Prabhupada's day. So I wanted to see. I didn't know how absorbed he was in whatever he was doing. And I said, "Srila Prabhupada, there's some guests here for you." And Prabhupada said, "Oh." I said, "Tell them to wait, 2 minutes, 3 minutes." I think he was doing something with one of the servants. So the servant came out, and the servant motioned for them, then you can go in now. But before, while we were waiting for the servant to come out, I was sitting there and I'm just chanting my rounds. And they looked at me and they kept looking at me. And you can feel when somebody's looking at you. Because I'm here and they're only 2 feet away sitting on another bench. We had these nice white benches that very presentable. The whole temple in 55th Street was meant for preaching, just like here. Everything was first class, all the facility. Wherever a guest went, there was something nice to see or sit or do, anything like that. So so I finally, I said, I looked and I said, "Do I know you?" He said, "What else can you say? Do I know you?" And he looked at me and says, "Don't you recognize us?" And that's the worst thing you can say to somebody. I said, "You look a little familiar. Why don't you refresh my memory?" He said, "You gave us our first Back to Godhead magazine in Central Park." I said, "Oh, now I remember." And I said, "And now we're here to see Srila Prabhupada." They had got, from that one Back to God, this is how it expands. From that one Back to Godhead, they had ordered all of Prabhupada's books. Because, in the back to Godhead, you turn back and it has, contact to BBT. And they had received the book, started chanting. And so you can never think that, even if it's just one Back to Godhead magazine or just anything, what happens next is not up to us. That person was just ready there. We were simply delivering the message. This is our efforts, just delivering the message. And so, what does it take? Sometimes to go out on street Sankirtan, it requires a certain amount of humility. Because sometimes it's a lot of humility. Because many people are going to refuse. The tendency is to get a little dejected or a little discouraged. Nobody's taking. I've been out for 4 hours. I've sold 1 stick of incense. It's 25 cents. What? It's like, But there are days like that. But it's not that we stop. We think, okay, I wasn't in the right consciousness. I can understand. Krishna wasn't reciprocating. So we have to, but how do we get to that right consciousness? So here we see in the Lilamrita, Prabhupada said humility. This is the secret weapon. Trinadapi sunichena taropi. We can't have any attitude. Attitude is our remnants of our material existence, who we were. It shouldn't be who we are now. It shouldn't be that somehow or other we've developed a new persona, and that along with it we have some ego puffed up, thinking that I'm a big devotee, or I'm a big sannyasi, or I'm a big whatever. No, that all you've done then is transfer your ego into some other false identification. Kiba vipra kiba nyazi sujaka. I am not any of these things. But sometimes it happens. And that's why in the Nectar of Instruction says one should not have too many followers. Because this simply reinforces, for those who are not advanced, this conception that I am something, whatever. I am a big guru. So this is not conducive for one's spiritual journey. Right? Because no matter who we are, no matter where we are, if we haven't reached the topmost level of Krishna consciousness, that means we're all still in the aspiring stage. And one is thinking, no, I've made it. I'm here. Give me my certificate. Sometimes we have a tendency to collect certificates. Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Disciples Course, this, that, the other thing. Sometimes someone will come to you and say, boy, I know I got 10 certificates, but what does that mean? What does it mean? Are you preaching? Are you actively trying to, utilize whatever it is that you've imbibed? I like yesterday Matunga used that word, imbibed. He was showing off his scholarly erudition. So we should always somehow or other try to touch our inner, how can you say, the person we want to be, that devotee that we want to be. Not aspiring for anything specific, but how can I become the best servant of my spiritual master? That's the person I want to touch. I want to find out, where is that person? How many layers do I have to peel away in order to get to that situation, And does it have to, and how do I have to do it every day? Usually there's some point in the day when somehow or other you've transcended the spiritual realization of being not the body, and all of a sudden now you're in another misconception, of something else. And so the only real identity is this, that I am Gopi Bhatu Pada Kamalayor Dasa Dasa Anandasa. And Prabhupada used another term also in the lecture in Mayapur. He said, we are parampara servants. Parampara. So I am a servant of my spiritual master. He is a servant of his spiritual master. In this way, we have an identity, but we have to remember it. It's not always automatic. Just like, when you take birth in a country, you think, okay, I'm American. And so you carry that around. It doesn't, I don't have to think about it there. So we need to get to that level. I don't have to think about that. Who am I? I am a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I am a servant of my eternal spiritual master. That is my identity. And so we have to demonstrate that and display that, which is why Prabhupada said you have to keep your sikha. Sometimes people, they get work outside and they cut off their sikha. But I worked outside in many situations, in very high-level situations, and I never felt the need to cut off the sikha. And it always became a conversation starter, if necessary. So one has to be. He has to hold on to certain aspects of his identity under all circumstances. Right? Otherwise, the tendency is there. If I can deny this, then what else can I deny? Right? In the early days of Christianity, the people who became saints, they were martyred. Why were they martyred? Because they didn't give up their faith. They didn't convert. Right? Prabhupada was talking about Buddhimanta Khan. In those days in Bengal, the people were so foolish. They were so, it's amazing, that because the Muslims you see in India, they're not coming from Turkey or, just like that. They're all from India. But how did they become Muslims? So the rulers, they would take their water pots, right, that they drink from, and they would sprinkle some water on these Brahmins, and then the Brahmin would think, oh, I've lost my caste. Now I am Muslim. What can I do? And Buddhimanta Khan went to this pundit, to this pundit, to this pundit. He went to all these pundits. What can I do? What can I do? How can I get, salvation? Well, I've lost my caste. Finally, he went to Lord Chaitanya. And what did Lord Chaitanya say? Just chant Hare Krishna. Automatically. But how foolish they were. Just sprinkling some water from a drinking pot of a Muslim. They've lost their caste. But anyway, such things were there. So we, obviously, we've seen how Maya works in the material world. So there are stranger things in that. If someone is captured by his, what was it that Vishnu John Maharaj used to call? He used to give very nice nectar devotion classes. And one thing that stuck with me was he would liken this, because we were all in those 60s and 70s, everybody was into music. Right? We said that in the class the other day when we used to go to the people's houses to get them to join the temple. Mostly we got musical instruments, musical amplifiers. So he said, and you see how many devotees were musicians and so many devotees still musicians. But so he said, this is impure reminiscence. And everyone has, familiarity that, sometimes you can't help it. You're someplace and a song comes on. And as soon as that song comes on, boom, immediately you're back 50 years ago to a certain time and circumstances where you heard that song or you identify with that song. So he called that impure reminiscence. It's like a trigger. So music is not the only thing. Just like we're talking here, sight, sound, smell, all these things are being carried, and any one of them is a trigger. It could be a sight, it could be a sound, it could be a smell. Right? And we don't want to associate with these things because we understand that this is impure reminiscence, and to some extent, certain aspects of this reminiscence can be deadly. Right? One of the greatest problems in any situation in the material world is pornography. Devastating. People's lives turned upside down. Not just people's lives, whole society turned upside down because of this. And so it's very unfortunate, but this is, and they have, there are clinical, rehabilitation centers specifically for this. It is so prevalent. And so this is something that has to be carefully guarded. That tendency is there. That impure tendency is lying dormant until it's fully cleansed. And so the more, it's just like, you don't want to awaken it. You don't want to awaken such a propensity. If you're chanting the holy names, you're washing, you're cleansing the heart. You don't want to throw dirt on top of it at any point during that cleansing process. And anything that you associate with that brings about this impure reminiscence will obviously have a negative effect. And you can only have so many negative effects. It's just like, the modes of material nature. Prabhupada uses the analogy of infection. So if you associate with someone who is sick, and everybody has this is simply a carrying disease. You're right there. The contamination is right there. So this infection, if you be too much association, too much contamination, then yes, that disease must manifest. Just like the chemical combination. There's nothing, very difficult to avoid that now, unless you have someone who knows how to neutralize it. A spiritual master or a God family member, God brother, God sister. Yes, because everything can be neutralized by, like Buddhimanta Khan situation, by chanting the holy name. Everything can be, all impurities can be neutralized by the chanting of the holy name. But we have to take it seriously. We have to be very careful about, how we chant our rounds. We have to be endeavoring with great purity. It's not a mechanical thing. Sometimes I think, let me just finish these rounds. And who was saying the other day in class, I'm just pulling the counter beats down. That must have been Arjuna. And also, maybe it was Nantabar. But we have to be away from that sense. The rounds will come automatically. It's not that once the purity is there, then automatically your concentration will allow you to chant in such a way that the flow, Prabhupada gave that example, like a child crying for its mother. That flow will promote the efficient use of this body in the process of chanting the holy names. You won't become tongue-tied. You won't stumble on it, the names. Sometimes we get. For us who learn to chant, hearing Srila Prabhupada, there's technically only one way to chant, but there are others. There's no hard and fast rules. But hearing Prabhupada chant, we could understand how efficient he was in his chanting. And how can you not take notice of that, the spirit, the acharya, someone who had been chanting for, since a young man, and giving us this opportunity to hear him and observe him. So such examples should be taken immediately to the heart. It's not that one has to think about it, sometimes someone, when you hand them something to eat or drink, what do? They smell it because they're not sure. What is it? And so this is a very gross test, but when the spiritual master is giving you something, there's no need to try to impose your sense perception and say, well, is this okay? No. Of course, then maybe that takes a little faith. Maybe some don't have that faith yet. That's a different story. But hearing faithfully from the spiritual master is one of the sure paths to success. One doesn't have to. Difficult for the crooked and simple for the simple at heart. Right? Prabhupada would say. So that simple at heart he never said simple of a simple mind or anything like that, or an advanced intellect. No, he said simple at heart. So everything is there through sincerity. And Prabhupada would reinforce this, and every time you hear Srila Prabhupada, he's always emphasizing this, sincerity. Purity is the force. What does that mean? Basically, it means sincerity. That there's how else do you put it? It doesn't mean I take 20 baths in a day. What does it mean? What does purity mean? I keep myself free from the influences of the modes of material nature and from any other impure reminiscence or things which will contaminate, recontaminate, reinfect, like that. It's careful. Just like if you're a doctor in a hospital, you don't go into they have isolation, they have quarantine. You don't walk in there without the proper protection. Right? You have to go in like this. They wear these full suits, to prevent contamination. And then they have another room. When you come out, that suit stays there. You don't take it out and you walk through the hospital in that suit that you were just in the isolation ward. No. You don't spread the contamination. And this is why also in the temple, everything has to be just right. We don't allow those to come in who present a potential hazard for bringing in contamination. Right? You want to bring in people who are sincere or simple-hearted or, this is the way that everyone benefits. This is the way everyone benefits. So we'll read the translation again. The action of the air is exhibited in movements, mixing, allowing approach to the objects of sound and other sense perceptions, and providing for the proper functioning of all other senses. Any questions? Krishna Kripa Prabhu. We We have to wait for the microphone, otherwise no one can hear you online. Although I could hear you. But in the meantime, ask the question, then we'll repeat it. Oh, here it is.
You were talking about those people who think that they're going to heaven, everyone else is going to hell. I was at this park, Lake Ella in Tallahassee, and this Christian preacher said, not only are the Buddhists and Hindus going to hell, but also the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons.
Everybody except me.
You're talking about the good fortune of how you were confident in the liberation of your father. Reminded me how there's a place where Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that if you're a Mahabhagavata, you liberate 100 generations. If you're a Madhyama, you liberate 14 generations. And even if you're a Kanishta, you liberate 3 generations. That was very inspiring for me, because even if I never make it beyond a Kanishta, at least I'm still benefiting 3 generations. And you're talking about how it's not good to meditate on sense gratification, because there's a point where it becomes too much. And there's a nice verse, 4:22-30 of the Bhāgavatam. When one's mind and senses are attracted to sense objects for enjoyment, the mind becomes agitated. As a result of continually thinking of sense objects, one's real consciousness almost becomes lost, like the water in a lake that is gradually sucked up by the big grass straws on its bank.
Yeah, Prabhupada, many times alluded to this phenomena that, we know that from materially speaking, that the imperfect process of sub-religious principles is that you recognize they have categories. They have sin. They know what sin is, so-called sin. And then they have their remedial methods of confession, this prayaschitta, trying to counteract karma. But it's impossible just like if I don't know what it is, it's like a trick question. That there are so many things they want you to answer one thing, but you don't understand that it's a multi-part question. And so you go to confess something that you think you know that you committed sinful activity, but then there are so many things that you don't know that are actual sinful activity, and so you cannot. So doing some type of alleviation, it's always imperfect. And the only pure process is the chanting of the holy name, because this encompasses every aspect of the interactions that we're reading, of the modes of material nature, wherein all these activities are taking place. And so this is a superior process, because we don't have to try to individually address each act that, whatever happened, whatever I did in my past that I so-called seek forgiveness for. Simply by chanting the holy name, Chaita Dharpana Marjana, everything is simultaneously addressed. And so there is no other more sublime or effective process than the chanting of the holy name. Just like there's but it takes time to appreciate that. And one has to have struggled, just like I've known many, who I grew up with that went into the priesthood, and they completely struggled. Why? Because their hearts were not being cleansed by some academic theologian pursuit. Not that they were still the same person that we did all our nonsense with, and they had a tendency to go back to that to the point where they were comfortable, who are the friends that they grew up with, who were not engaged in spiritual activities. So this one person, the only thing different about him was that he had a white collar, and that he performed certain ritualistic functions, on a regular basis. But his heart had not changed, because the process is incomplete. The prayers are very simple, very nice if you want to, just from an objective point of view. The sentiment may be there, but, Prabhupada always used to say, give us this day our daily bread. Already there's a misconception that somehow God is our order supplier and that we're not his servants, that somehow or other, because the parent is taken to be the servant of the child, right? The parent gives the child everything, whatever the child needs. And so therefore, and this is the common conception in most religions, that God is the father or some superior authority figure. And in this way, somehow or other, we're dependent on him for all these things. And therefore, the actual relationship is obscured. Unless one can come to the level of understanding that I am a servant of God, then he cannot make any spiritual advancement. As long as he's thinking that God is there for me to take. It's like big government, from the cradle to the grave. People are lulled into some type of, complacency where they don't even want to act for themselves. We understand that, yes, God is the provider, Om Purnamadak Purnamidam. He's the complete whole, and he's providing everything for everyone. But we don't take it for granted. Krishna says, if I did not work, then no one would work. So work is there, but work has to be done according to the, what is that? Anyway, one has to do everything for Krishna. Whatever you offer, whatever you eat, whatever you give away, whatever austerities you perform, everything has to be done as a sacrifice for Krishna. And so this is the difference we see and this is the difference we experience. It's not just something you see. It's a difference we experience, that how we don't know how many lives we've been here in this material world. But when you come into Krishna consciousness, you can appreciate that this cleansing process has given me some realization beyond 99% of the global population. How is that? How is there such a profound change? It's not superimposed, it's not brainwashing, it's the cleansing that allows this realization, which is latent, Savasya Chaham Riddhi Sanivishno, to be remembered. It's the secret key to access, all of our previous knowledge, which is just stored away in some file folder in the back of our minds, that hard drive that accompanies us to every birth and death. So therefore we see we really have this appreciation. Nobody else has this awakening. They have, some people feel relieved of their sinful activities. That's a common sentiment of all religions, and as well as Krishna consciousness, that we feel relief when you surrender to God. But then that surrender involves much more than just a one-time thing where you're dumped in the water and then you're picked up. You have to surrender every single moment. Satatam kirtayantamam yatantasradidada. Always chanting my glories and endeavoring with great determination. So we don't see that in most circumstances in other philosophies. Those great souls worship me with devotion. So we're very fortunate. We have to, the way we show appreciation is to try to utilize our days fully in the service of the Lord, to whatever extent possible, not a moment wasted. There's no, depending on your desire, determination, you will see that change even on a daily basis, because a realization has the effect of lifting you up to another level. Certain realizations are big and certain realizations are small. Depending on your endeavor, isn't that what it says? To those who are constantly devoted, and where I give them the understanding by which they come to me. So that understanding that hand up is that reciprocation from Krishna and the Yayatama Prapadyate, that as you surrender unto him, he rewards you accordingly. So these are promises. These are not suggestions. Krishna is not saying, maybe I'll give you. No. But sometimes maybe we think that there's some maybe involved. But that maybe is all on us. So any other questions or comments? Krishna Kripa just led me down a different path. All right, then we'll adjourn for prasadam, which is one of our most important processes of self-realization. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhya vacha patitanam bhavinebhya vaishnavya namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki. Grantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki. Shri Shri Radha Govinadev ki. Shri Shri Radha Damodar ki.